Namaskara. A very good evening and warm welcome to everyone assembled here for this evening's special lecture by Shatavadhani Dr. R. Ganesh. Atharva Forum and the IKS Division, Ministry of Education. We are very happy to have our first event in Bangalore. Of course, it's a great honor to have Shatavadhani Dr. R. Ganesh delivering it for us. Atharva Forum runs an online YouTube channel featuring long-form videos on various aspects of Indian culture, and I recommend it to people assembled here to go through and enjoy the content presented there and spread the good word among your friends and family. Now, I would request Professor Ganti Murthy ji, National Coordinator, IKS Division, to please felicitate Shatavadhani Dr. R. Ganesh. It is actually not necessary to give any introduction once we have a person like Shatavadhani Dr. R. Ganesh delivering a lecture, because he's so comprehensive in the way he covers a topic. But I'll just do this small labor as part of my duty. Today's topic is actually an English version of Shatavadhani Dr. R. Ganesh's long written article, Maritu Hoda Murane Ayama. This is about the Brhatkatha tradition. Many times, me, Dr. Ganesh, and many of our friends have lamented that in our tradition, probably not given the Mahabharata as much emphasis as the Ramayana has got. When you bring Brhatkatha into the equation, it has got even less attention. So, it is all the more important to explore and understand what Brhatkatha has to offer. Brhatkatha was the first and earliest probable collection of kathas known to the Indian tradition. Its author is unanimously referred to as Gunadhya, and the work was supposed to have been written in Paisaci Prakrit. The original is no longer available. However, thanks to the labors of people like Somadeva, Budhaswamin, and the like, we have condensations of the original, the Kathasaritsagara and Brhatkatha Shlokasangraha, and so on. Many famous stories, including those involving King Udayana as well as King Vikramaditya and his throne, trace their origins to the Brhatkatha. Even the Hitopadesha and Panchatattva traditions loosely owe their origins to the Brhatkatha. It has been suitably recognized and celebrated by many great poets in our tradition, whether it is Kāliḍāsa. Kāliḍāsa refers to the citizens of Ujjain as the ones who were well versed with the katha of Ujjain, of Udayana.
Katha Kovida Grama Vruddhaha.
Udayana Katha Kovida Grama Vruddhaha. And Bāṇa also extols Gunādhya's Brhatkatha, Samuddīpita Kandarpa, Krita Gauri Prasadhana, Haraleela Nokasya Vismayaya Brhatkatha. So he says in the introductory verses of Harshacharita, and even Dandi's Dashakumara Charita traces its origins to Brhatkatha. Basically, Brhatkatha was the first large reservoir of short stories in the Indian tradition, probably the world tradition. Karnataka is lucky to have some of the best
sculptures.
Correct. And the Ganga king Durvinita was known to have translated into Sanskrita. One of the inscriptions says, refers to him as Deva Bharati Nibadha Vaddakatha. So, it's something to be proud of as we Kannadigas. Even the Tamil tradition seems to have had a version of Brhatkatha. Perungadai and O.V. Swaminatha Iyer got it from the manuscript form. Many such details and very valuable discussions are done in a very lucid manner by our own Sri A.R. Krishna Shastri in his seminal work Kathamrita, which incidentally is getting translated in an episodal fashion in Preksha.
It's now complete.
It's almost complete. It's complete now. Yeah. So that is a brief introduction. It is even if you look at Somadeva's Kathasaritsagara, which was probably about 900 years ago, probably the original was present, because he says that he is not deviated from the original. Namanagap yatikramaha, he says in one of the early verses. But somehow we don't have the original today. This is actually a tip of the hat to people who do work like condensation of originals or translations and all that, because this is one of those rare instances where only the condensation is surviving and the original is not there. Today, unfortunately, this great epic is not really in the discussion as much as it should be, And that is one of the reasons why we have this talk today. And we cannot think of anyone better suited to do this than Shatavadhani Dr. R. Ganesh. I now request Dr. R. Ganesh to commence the lecture. Thank you.
And at the outset, I have to thank IKS, Sri Ganti Murthy Garu, Professor, and also the friends of Atharva Forum who has come all along from Delhi. And I didn't expected so many scholars and so many enthusiasts of Indian culture and who are erudite people in many aspects, and they have all come together. It is hard to find nowadays such a gathering. That's why I feel rather small in front of you, because would I be doing any justice for your arrival? Because our Kannada great poet of Karnataka, Kumar Vyasa says, Keduva Surigalu Sanakadigalu Jangama Janardhanaru. The people who are going to listen to us, they are the moving lords, Paramatmas, Janardhanas. Janardhana, Mahavishnu is in Vaikuntha. Only our Jagannatha is Chalanti Pratima. And all other gods are Sthiramurtis. Only the Utsav Murtis move around. But listeners are like the mobile Narayanas, mobile Janardhanas. And they are Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanat Kumara, Sanat Sujata, and such Nitya Suris. So, with this respect for our listeners, we have to start any endeavor. And that is my foremost duty. Sabhaye Namaha, Namas Sadase, Sadasas Pataye Cha. And I have no words to thank my esteemed friend Shri Vasuki, who has made my work less burdened by introducing the importance of this seminal work and the great tradition Brhatkatha as it is. Now I recited one verse Arya from Arya Saptashati of Govardhana, who was a colleague of the famed Jayadeva, Gita Govinda's author Jayadeva. In his times, Govardhana also existed. And he says in the opening verses of his Arya Saptashati, says, Shri Ramayana Mahabharata Bṛhatkatha-yaam Kavin Namaskurmaha. He never forgot the third dimension. Trisrota iva Sarasa Saraswati Spurati Bhinna. Like the three streams of Saraswati. Means we have Saraswati as Ambita Me, and another aspect as Devita Me, and other aspect as Nadita Me. The three forms of Saraswati as mother, as the goddess, and as the river. Devi Vak, the divine speech at one level, and the divine mother at the other level, and the ever-feeding celestial river which has blessed our country. And also it means, Saraswati means that stream, that river which has full water, abundant water, perennial source of water. There we have the Ganga, Yamuna and Saraswati. Ganga is Ramayana. Punat Bhuvanam Punya Ramayana Mahanadi. Vālmīki Girisambhuta Ramasagara Gamini. So Ramayana Ganga is there. And Mahabharata is Yamuna, where Krishna, he had his wonderful childhood up to his youth. He was with Yamuna. And his color also goes with the complexion of Yamuna. And Ramayana, pristine pure as far the values are concerned, there it is Ganga. And then this last river, physically lost river, not completely lost, still flowing. Not many people know that the river Saraswati is still flowing, but it has become an insignificant as far as our mundane purposes are concerned. But the perennial source is always available. And that Gupta Gamini Saraswati is Brhatkatha. And a poet from Bengal, western part of India, by the time of 12th century Common Era, he could notice the importance of this tree. But we are very unfortunate, we could not identify that. But our tradition was never blind. If we look at Kshemendra, who for the first time condensed all the three great works, Ramayana, Mahabharata and Brhatkatha, Ramayana Manjari, Bharata Manjari and Brhatkatha Manjari, and later came Somadeva. And in the intermediate time, Brhatkatha Shloka Sangraha of Budhaswamin also emerged. But Kshemendra, the first visionary, who saw the importance of these three works to be retold in a concise form, because we know Dekhe Dayeva Vistaraha, a poet and a poetician of 7th century Common Era by name Bhamaha of Kashmir, he spoke about the problem of elaboration. By the time of Bhamaha itself, the people were Sukumaramatis. They were unable to go through the difficulty of completing the work. And for them it was Sankshepa. According to the tradition of Mahabharata, earlier it was also a big work of 7 lakh verses. And so also the Brhatkatha was of 7 lakh verses. Whether you may believe it or not, but this much is true. It was very, very huge. Shatakoti Pravistaram. Ramayana Shatakoti Pravistaraha. It is of multiple crores. So there are so many Charitam Raghunathasya Shatakoti Pravistaram, like that it is said. Means in our tradition, nothing is first of its kind and nothing is small. Everything is eternal. Everything is very voluminous, both in quality and quantity. And to that lineage, we have the Brhatkatha also. In one of my avadhanams, I had been questioned by the scholars to come out with one Sisa Padyam on Gunadhya, the great author of this mighty work, Brhatkatha. For the benefit of the people here, Kannada people, I am going to recite because I have to give my tribute to Gunadhya, who is almost forgotten by so many later poets and later scholars. ಕಾಣಭೂತಿಯ ಕಥಾ ವೀಣೆಯಂ ಸತ್ಕಾವ್ಯವಾಣಿಯಂ ಪ್ರಾಣಿಸಿದ ವೈಣಿಕೇಂದ್ರ ರಕ್ತದಿಂದನು ರಕ್ತ ಕಲ್ಪನಾಸಕ್ತಿಯಂ ಶುಕ್ತಿಮೌಕ್ತಿಕದಂತೆ ಕೋದ ಕವಿಯೇ ಪೈಶಾಚಿ ಯುಕ್ತಿಯೊಳ್ ಪೀಯೂಷ ಪಾಯಿಯುಂ ಲಾಲಾಸ್ಯನಪ್ಪವೋಲುಲಿದ ಬಲುಹೇ ಸಹೃದಯಾಭಾವಗ್ನಿರಸಿಕಾರ್ಚಿಯೊಳ್ ಸ್ವೀಯ ಕೃತಿಯನಾಹುತಿ ಮಳ್ಪ ಖಂಡವಶಿಖಿ ಅಂದು ನೀಂ ಪುಳ್ತಿಸಿದ ಕಿರ್ಚು ಸಾರ್ಚುತಿರ್ಪ ಸ್ವೇದ ಖೇದಮಯ ಧೂಮದ ಸ್ತೋಮಮಿಂದುಂ ಕವಿಯು ತೆನ್ನ ಕಣ್ಣಂ ಕರಂಗಿಸುತ್ತರಿರ್ಕುಂ ಸಕಲ ಸುಗುಣಾಢ್ಯ ಸಾಹಿತೀಹಿತ ಗುಣಾಢ್ಯ. ಓ ಸಾಹಿತೀಹಿತ ಗುಣಾಢ್ಯ, ಓ ಪೊಯೆಟ್ ಗುಣಾಢ್ಯ, ಯು ಆರ್ ಎಂಬಾಡಿಮೆಂಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಆಲ್ ವರ್ಚ್ಯೂಸ್, ಸಕಲ ಸುಗುಣಾಢ್ಯ. You, for the want of sahridayas, you threw away all that you wrote into the divine fire, Agni Bhattaraka, and how the fumes and the smokes which would have attacked your eyes and made it weep. Still I have that weeping, still I have those tears in me. Kaviyu tenna kannam karangisuttalirku. Those days smoke, that smoke which arose from the fire which was consuming mercilessly all the 6 lakh verses of Brhatkatha Gunadhya, that is still haunting me, that is still making me suffocated. And you wrote in Paisaci. Not many people know Paisaci is a Prakrit. Perhaps it belonged to central India, but was also spoken in Kashmir. It is said so in the Prakrit text. It is a dialect which has been spoken in Kashmir, and it is the ancestor of Kashmiri, the Dogri language. And Paisaci perhaps may be the spoken tongue of the Vindhya province also, because there, what should I call, Bhuta, for that we don't have any equivalent in English for Bhuta. It's neither devil nor spirit nor imp whatsoever. It is an existence, a higher existence. And that Kanabhuti was a cursed person by name Supratika Yaksha, under the governance of Kubera who existed. He was cursed for no reason, for some reason we don't know. And then his curse was taken back by Kubera as per the orders of Parvati, because he listened to the stories of Brhatkatha told by Pushpadanta. And Pushpadanta, along with his friend and colleague Malyavan, who overheard secretly the conversation between Parvati and Parameshwara, because Parvati was very fond of listening to beautiful stories. As people of today, every time, even gods, they do want to listen to beautiful stories untold by others. And they feel so much of proud and they have so much of privilege in listening to such new stories. Novelty is the order of the day. And that's why Shiva told. And it is said these stories belong to the realm of Gandharvas, Apsaras and Vidyadharas. Ekanta sukhino devaha manushya nitya dukkhitaha divya manusha cheshtatu parabhage naharini. Why not human being story? Why not the story of divine people, ekanta sukhino devaha. The gods are always happy, so their stories have no interest. People who are always happy, they have no stories. All happy homes are alike. Every unhappy home is unhappy in its own way, it is said. Like that, the divine people, the gods, they have no engaging stories. Manushyaha nitya dukkhitaha. We human beings are always in misery. And so our stories are no more engaging. We should have some masala. Divya manusha cheshtatu parabhage naharani. That's how it came to the demigods. And these stories told by Shiva was heard by Parvati. She thought that these stories are fresh and I am the first listener. But to put off her curiosity, to put off her pride, her friend Vijaya next day told the same story to her. How come? Pushpadanta's wife is Vijaya. As we know, husband and wife both are employed under some other couple. It happened in the case of Parvati and Parameshwara employing Pushpadanta and Vijaya. Parvati naturally got enraged and Shiva conducted an enquiry commission and found that Pushpavanta is guilty. And also his friend Malyavan. Both were cursed because Malyavan had a part in it. And Shiva then told, of course, he is a merciful god, Ashutosha and Bhaktanugraha Murthy. So he gave a Nushapa. And so the end of the Shapa, end of the curse was also declared by him. You go to Kanabhuti, who is a cursed Yaksha who stays in Vindhyatavi, the forests of India. And there, if you narrate all these stories, Kanabhuti will also get his form once again, and you will be coming back to Shiva Sanidhya, Kailasa. So it was settled. And this Malyavan took birth as Gunadhya, it is said. And Gunadhya came to Kanabhuti. And there is a big story. I want to compress this to cut it short. Satavahana king, one king was there, belonging to the dynasty Satavahana. He is called as Satavahana. As we know, so many kings in the lineage of Janaka are all called Janaka. Likewise, he was Satavahana. He was a Prakrit buff. He always engaged himself in Prakrita, not in Sanskrita. First of all, thinking that Sanskritam and Prakritam are two different languages is a sin, to say the least. They are two ways of expressing the same language. Sanskritam is the written form and Prakritam is the spoken form. But that doesn't mean Sanskritam was never spoken and Prakritam was never written, because our people untold things will be assumed very badly and dangerously and dubiously. So, in our news channels and all, not of nowadays news channels, Doordarshan and Akashvani, they used to read out the news in a very chaste, decent language, whether it is Kannada or Telugu or whatsoever, Pradesh Samachara, and also the Delhi news. So, the same chaste language being spoken there, but it is chaste, it is Sanskritam. But what we hear in the streets, in the marketplaces, that is Prakrita. The same Kannada, the same Hindi, the same Marathi, the same Tulu or same Tamil or whatsoever, everything is same, but spoken differently. These things should never be taken as different, because we have a key to understand that nowhere in our Sanskrit tradition, in our Indian writing tradition, we speak about the translation when it comes to recasting the Prakrit verses or Prakrit prose passages into Sanskritam. We say Chaya. It is the shadow. Prakrita Padyasya Sanskrita Chaya. Sanskrita Padyasya Prakrita Chaya. It means it is the shadow. Shadow cannot exist independently. It has to exist only with the original. But when we come to translation, we have clear other things, Bhashantaram, something like that we have. That means this concept of Chaya itself reveals the truth. And we know, I am digressing, sorry, but it has to be made clear because there are many people with ulterior motives to declare an eternal gap between Sanskrita and Prakrit. Not only gap, they are thought to be rivals. They are thought to be born enemies. It is nasty, so nasty. So, in our tradition, we have both the forms existing together. And every Sanskrit poet knew both. And every commoner also could understand that. We have a big tradition for that. Now, coming back to the concept which I want to drive home, these two expressions are one and the same. They have their origin in the Vedika Sanskritam or Chandas as we call. According to Panini, it is Chandaha. And so, Prakrita and Sanskrita, they should not be treated as different. And we have the divisive forces which always advocate, which always harp on these things. And saying that Brhatkatha tradition is a revolt, is a reaction against the tradition of Vyasa and Vālmīki, the tradition of Veda. How foolish it is. It is not so. I will be coming to those details later. Hence, Prakrita has no independent existence apart from Sanskrita, and so is Sanskrita. We say that Kannada is one. Now, the Kannada Sahitya Sammelana, the annual national level Kannada meet, is going on. There they say the language of Pampa is Kannada, the language of Kumar Vyasa is Kannada, the language of Kuvempu is Kannada, the language of our film writers as Kannada, the language of our TV channel anchors as Kannada. But a person who is an anchor of TV, if Nettamanadi Bhanumati Soltode or Yamuna Tira Tarangaman or Mragaya Vyajade Norme, such verses of Pampa, they cannot make head and tail. Still it is same. So also the Sangam Tamil, and also we have Chennai Bhasha, Madras Bhasha. Can they be same? They say that it is one and the same. Likewise, everywhere we have, their linguistic traditions are inseparable, monolithic in nature, and yet Sanskrit and Prakrit, they are different. How ulterior motives work behind such things, we should be careful about that. Hope our Sanskrit scholars and grammarians and linguists, they focus on these things. Sheldon Pollack, he has spun big theories around these things, and even many more earlier scholars also. For that, even our Indic scholars who have been harbored in US, they are no different, including very good grammarians like Madhav Deshpande and others. They harp these things. I don't know how far it will be true. Well, coming back to the topic, there is nothing like true traditions, Sanskrit tradition and Prakrit tradition. It is one and the same, with different temperament. There is nothing like opposing camps, Marga and Deshi. Nowadays, people cry so much about Deshi and they want to pit all these against Marga. But Marga is a realization and Deshi is Drishyate Sarvatra iti Deshi, that which is seen everywhere. Deshi is what being comprehended, what we understand around us. And Marga is a realization. Brhyate iti Marga. Marga is a search. And Deshi is the input we get. In Marga we have Deshi and in Deshi we have Marga. So, treating that Sanskrit is Marga and Prakrit as Deshi, and again making such hierarchies and trying to divide, and somebody is ruling and we have become pawns in their wretched hands. For that, Brhatkatha tradition is a fertile land to such things. We should be careful about that. For that, we should empower ourselves. There is no other way. Now, coming to the story, Kanabhuti, the cursed person Supratika Yaksha, he got all the stories from Pushpadanta, and Pushpadanta, he went back to Kailasa, and Kanabhuti is waiting for Gunadhya has to come, and Malyavan took birth as Gunadhya, and he was in the court of Satavahana. Satavahana had lot of affinity for Prakrit, I told, and Satavahanas, they have encouraged Sanskrita, Prakrita, everything, and even the regional languages as well. But we don't know such records existed. But we feel that they should have encouraged all these things. And they performed so many yagas. By that itself, we can assume there are so many inscriptions of Shatavahanas found in Maharashtra, in Andhra, and other places. By that, we know that many Shrauta yagas have been performed. Will it not be an indication that they were Vedic? And Vedic means not at all anti-Sanskrit. These things are very well inferred. And we have Gautami Putra Shatakarni, Vasishti Putra Shatakarni. The naming itself is Vedic in nature and it is akin to the undivided Indian culture. But this king was not much interested. Like it happens. Ke bhuvan nadhyarajasya kale prakrita bhashinaha. Kale Shri Sahasankasya sarve Sanskrita bhashinaha. It is said so by Rajashekara of 10th century Common Era. During the time of Adhyaraja, it is Satavahana, who are not speaking Prakrit. Everybody followed Prakrit because as per the rulers, peoples, and especially the intellectuals, so-called intellectuals, mainstream changes. And in the time of Sahasanka, it is Vikramaditya, everyone became Sanskritist. So according to the whims and fancies of the rulers. But the reality will be changing here and there. But the highest reality remains the same. The societal changes will be marginal and they should be known by us. Likewise, it happened in the case of Satavahana. He was encouraging, and Gunadhya was a learned scholar in all the languages. Our tradition is always multilingual. Multilingual means not all the languages are different. They had different shades. At the same time, they knew where to employ, where not to employ. If you look into Rajashekara's Kavi Miyamsa, Kavicharya, Rajacharya, one section there, he says, a person who knows only one language cannot become a poet. As Milton says, one tongue is not a tongue. So says Rajashekara. And he says, to become Kaviraja, one should be capable of wielding his pen in all the possible languages. Even Kshemendra says, Giteshu Gatha, Swata Desha Bhasha, Baddeshu Datta, Shravanam Nitantam. Even in the folk songs, a true poet should lend his ears and enjoy them and get inspired. Patet Samastan, Kila Kāliḍāsa, Krita Prabandhan, Itihasa Darshi. One should read completely Kāliḍāsa, one should acquire the wisdom of Vyāsa, everything should happen. Likewise, it was the tradition. And Vishwanatha, a poet and a poetician of Utkala, Odisha, of 14th century Common Era, he says, Ashtadasha Bhasha Vara Vilasini Bhujangaha. He is a Romeo in the group of 18 language damsels. So our poets were so capable and adept. And even in Karnataka, he was a Telugu poet also, Nachana Somana, Ashtabhasha Kovida. And all were Kannada poets, they knew 4 languages, Sanskrita, Prakrita, Apabhramsha and Deshabhasha. Ashtadasha Bhasha, all these many great scholars. Raghavanka was Ubhay Kavi Kamalaravi. Like that, many people were there, and hence they had no disparity. They knew the languages. Nowadays, people know not more than 2 or 3 languages. They become polyglots and also writing voluminous works on linguistics and try to draw their own wrong inferences. Well, so Satavahana had a flair for Prakrita, but his wife was good Sanskritist. In one water sport, he splashed water on her face. Then she said, Rajan Modakaistadaya. Modakaistadaya, Ma Udakaistadaya. A Guna Sandhi was made because Sandhi is meant for easy pronunciation. Without Sandhi, pronouncing is difficult. With Sandhi, it is always easier because Sandhi rules have been formulated according to our ease in pronunciation. So, the king could not understand that. He started throwing modaka, sweet cakes, on her face. Then how foolish you are, can't even understand this. He got offended naturally, that too being offended by a woman amidst other women in the court. He summoned Gunadhya and Sharvavarma, another scholar. I want to learn Sanskrit. Wives are really engaging people, encouraging people, and stimulating people perhaps, and they would motivate even in this way. Thanks to that wife of Satavahana, by virtue of her wisdom, we have Gunadhya's work, and even the king got exposed to Sanskritam and became a great patron of Sanskrit. But he went to the other extreme. Then he wanted to learn. Gunadhya said, it is difficult to learn Sanskrit grammar within a short span of time. You need 12 years. Shruyate Dvadasha Varshani Vyakarana Shastram. It is heard by us through elders that for 12 years one has to spend time, one has to invest 12 years to have a command over the language. Then the kings are not for this. Sukumara Matayaha Nripaha. The kings are always tender-minded. Then Sharvavarma says, within a span of 6 months I will. Some people will always be so positive and they assure fantastic things, whether it is possible or not. Gunadhya said, no, it's impossible. Well, I will do it. And the exchange of heated words, they ended up like this. Gunadhya said, if you can do so within 6 months, I will be on my own accord losing Sanskritam and Prakritam and even Desha Bhasha. No Sanskrit, no Prakrit, no Desha Bhasha. I will spend rest of my life with some other language. I will be discovering that. Then Gunadhya said, if I fail, I will become your slave. I will take your footwear on my head. For 12 years I roam everywhere. Something like that. Very violent oaths they take, pledges they make. And Sharvavarma, by the grace of Skanda Kumara, it seems, he got a simplified grammar, Katantra Vyakarana, or Kalapa Vyakarana as it is called. We have a school of grammar, simplified when made simple grammar, by virtue of which the king got initiated Sanskrit and Gunadhya lost the fight. And so he went to forest. As he had taken a pledge that he will not be using Sanskritam, and the Prakritam of that area we should never forget. Prakrita varies by region and region to region. As we have in Karnataka, we have Ballari Kannada, Mangaluru Kannada, Kundapura Kannada, Mysore Kannada, Chamarajanagar Kannada, Hubballi Dharwad Kannada, Bidar Kannada, like that we have so many Kannadas, and Bengaluru Kannada, if at all it exists. Likewise, we have Maharashtri, the language around Maharashtra, Shauraseni, in the region of Shurasena, Mathura. Like that, everywhere we have Magadhi. Ardhamagadi is Vruddhamagadi. Vaddhamagadi means it is a greater Magadi, Magadi of the elders. Vruddhamagadi, not Ardhamagadi. So, it is the language of the elders, Jaina Tirthankaras and Jaina Munis. It is of the Bihar region. Likewise, in different places, we have Dakshinatya Prakrita. According to Natya Shastra, South Indian languages, they have their origin in Dakshinatya Prakrita. Well, I am not going to those details because I will be missing train of Brhatkatha. Now, coming to Gunadhya, he was so honest a person, he had taken a pledge that he will not be using the Prakrit of that region. He was king of Paitan, Pratishtana. Nowadays in Maharashtra, we find that small village now, Paitan. But Maharashtra is nowhere, Maharashtra cannot be used. So also Sanskritam, so also other languages of that region. He went in search of something. In the Vindhya region, he found this Kanabhuti. And Kanabhuti, looking at him, thought, everything will be settled now. I shall narrate the whole story to him. So he narrated all the stories of Vidyadharas. And Gunadhya wrote later by using his blood. Such a thing happened twice in Indian tradition. One is the Mahabhashya of Bhagavan Patanjali, which was lost by the negligence, sheer negligence at the worst times of those days. Then one by name Chandra Sharma, he wrote, or even in some text it is Govinda Sharma. He, according to Patanjali Charita of Ramabhadra Dikshita, was the mentor of Shankar Bhagavad-pada. And to him, Govinda Bhagavad-pada, Bhatti and Bhartrhari, all these people are connected like that, it goes. Well, whatever may be, here we should notice one thing. This way of linguistic connections and cultural connections are so many, and we have to develop our cultural history on the basis of these things, these anecdotes, textual evidences, aitihyas, janashruti, and others. Now, Gunadhya went to Kanabhuti and wrote these things by using his blood. And Govinda Sharma, he did so. He wrote all the Mahabhashya by using his blood. And one portion of it was eaten away by a lamb, Ajabhakshita Bhashya, like that the tradition says. Well, coming back to this main story, Gunadhya sent this work to Satavahana. He was disgusted by the writing in blood in Paisaci Prakrit. Paisaci was the language which was used by Kanabhuti for narrating the stories because he was Pishacha. He did according to his language, he did so. And I said earlier itself, it is the basis for modern Kashmiri also. But Paisaci is no way different from other Prakritas. Here and there we have certain variations. For example, in Shauraseni Prakrita, if Arya becomes Ajja, here in Paisaci it will become Ayya, much closer to Kannada, much closer to South Indian languages. And he rejected this work. Then he got offended, Gunadhya, in vain. He threw away the whole work into fire. But before doing so, he started reading out the last reading. And even the animals, birds, everything, every being in life, it started listening to it, and it lost even the idea of eating everything. So the animals were, as they are taken away by the hunters, because nobody would hunt. They were all engaged in listening to these beautiful stories, but their meat was not fresh. Their meat was not rich and juicy. Their meat was not oily. They had no fat content, because the fat content was used to sustain and to listen to this. It's a wonderful metaphor. Even the animals were responding so beautifully to that. If you are not going to respond, how inferior will be. Then the king realized, came. Here you see, the people who always want to pitch Sanskrit against Prakrit and vice versa, they say Gunadhya was rejected. But the story is not complete. He was accepted with pomp and glory. He was brought back. He was once again was given respectable position in the court of Shatavadhani, and the work became popular. So it goes, the story. People are not for that. They have their own things, their own stories to spin. In the case of Buddha also the same thing happened. Buddha saw an old man, a deceased person, and a corpse. And so he got rejected from the world, and then he went in search of truth, like that. It is nihilism. But in Lalita Vistara and even in other works and even in the Buddha Charitas Ashwagosha, it is clearly said he saw the fourth person, a monk, a saint, in absolute peace and happiness. And having seen these three things yesterday, and now seeing the fourth person, Buddha got an assurance that there is enlightenment, there is peace, and there is calmness, and there is truth, there is beauty, and there is joy. This positive aspect of Buddha is not propagated even in our school books. Coming back to the story, that though the ditching of Gunadhya is highlighted and not the reinstating of Gunadhya. And then the story goes. This is entirely based on the Udayana's son Naravahana Datta. Udayana's story is something like a preamble to the adventures, the romantic adventures of his son Naravahana Datta. I'm not going to the details of the story, just I want to highlight the tradition, because you yourself have to read that. It is highly engaging. Those who can read Kannada, we have wonderful concised version, as Vasuki told, Brhatkatha being told as Kathamrita, Kathasaritsagara's authentic and condensed translation by a very great scholar, E.R. Krishna Shastri, who condensed Mahabharata also. Incidentally, Preksha published the Mahabharata in the name Essential Mahabharata, his Vachara Bharata being published with lots of notes and supplementing material. And the Brhatkatha's condensed version, Kathamrita, will also appear sooner. Well, coming to the major topic of today's discourse, Brhatkatha tradition. Our friend Vasuki indicated about that also. Now I will be highlighting some features because it's very voluminous. I'll be moving here and there. At another 45 minutes, please bear with me. Vyasa and Vālmīki, they are seer poets, and Gunadhya is a seer-like poet. In our tradition, it is said he is Rishikalpa. Rishis and Rishikalpa. Vyasa and Vālmīki, they highlighted more, they pondered more on dharma and moksha among the purusharthas. They concentrated more on dharma and moksha. Not that they were averse to artha and kama. All these are essential, but artha and kama, they are very obvious. Nobody need to be taught. Nobody need to be taught to be selfish. Everyone will be born selfish. But to become selfless, to realize self, we need dharma and moksha. So they emphasized more on that. Loka garbhagraham kritsnam yathavat samprakashitam itihasa pradipena Mahabharata is eulogized so in the same work itself. Mohavarana Ghatina Loka Garbhagram Kritsnam Yathavat Saprakashitam. The interiors of the world, the sometimes sanctum of Loka, is illuminated by the great poet Bharata Pradipa, the master lamp Bharata, that has illuminated our inner quarters. That is how Mahabharata has focused on all the Purusharthas. Dharme cha arthe cha kame cha mokshe cha bharatarshava idihasti tadanyatra enya hasti nagat kuchit. It is the quotation from Mahabharata itself. But their emphasis was more on dharma and moksha because they have to be emphasized. And even in the case of Vālmīki. That is why it is said in the Dhyana Shlokas of Vālmīki Ramayana, Vedavedye pare punsi jate dasharatatmaje veda prachetasadāsit sakshat Ramayanatmana. And he is dharmajnascha kritajnascha satyavakyo dhradavrataha, like that. But we need entertainment also. As in the traditional kacheris or performances of Carnatic music, we have the second part of the kacheri occupying full of these tukudas, an ashtapadi, a javali, and tillana, and other things. Likewise, we need that. Staple food is dharma and moksha, but we need side dishes also. These aspects of kama and artha, they have taken the forefront in Brhatkatha. But they too are not completely devoid of dharma. But this is of a higher dosage when compared to them. So our master poets, our visionaries, they thought everything is needed. And that's why if you look at the heroes of Ramayana and Mahabharata, Rama or Krishna, they are Dhirodatas in all respects. But if you look at the hero of Brihatkatha, Udayana and his son, they are Dhira Lalita. And the commoners, they are Dhira Shanta. Dhira Shanta means a commoner with good intentions, but helpless. Like most of good Indians, most of sensible Indians are like the Charudattas of Shudraka's great immortal work, Mrichakatika. So all our poets, they followed this. Vasuki mentioned about Kāliḍāsa, Udayanakatha, Kovida Grama Buddhaha, and even Bāṇa. Even before Bhāsa we have. In Bhāsa's two great works, they are more authentic when compared to the other 11 works which have been attributed by the scholars of yesteryears. The Travancore plays, as we call them, 13 plays. Their Avimaraka is again belonging to Bṛhatkatha tradition. And of course, Swapnavasavadatta and the prequel of that Pratigna Yogandharayana is there. And Shudraka, the great author of Mrichakatika, he too drew the material from this. So we have Kāliḍāsa. Kāliḍāsa, though he laid his hands more on Ramayana and Mahabharata, he had good understanding of these things. Udayanakatha, Kovida Grama Vriddaha clearly mentions that. And he was belonging to Ujjaini and he was very fond of that and was so proud about that. And his predecessors, Bhasa, Saumila, Kaviputra, many people would have written many things on these. And then we have Shudraka. Then comes Kāliḍāsa. Shudraka's Mrichakatika is also belonging to the same tradition. And then we have other work of Shudraka, not many people know, Veena Vasavadatta, is that another play, beautiful play, incomplete. Unfortunately, it is incomplete as it is available now. Perhaps the poet would have completed that. 6 acts are available. There again we see the story of Udayana and Vasavadatta. Many details here are not found in Bhasa. Then we have Shakti Bhadra, one person from South India. He wrote one Unmada Vasavadatta. We don't know what happened to that work. His Ascharya Chudamani is available, a work based on Ramayana. Like that, there is a big lineage, very long lineage. And Dandi, again also mentioned, contemporary of Bāṇa, who existed in South India, Kanchipuram, perhaps in the court of Pallava Mahendra Varma and his son Narasimha Varma, who were contemporaries of our Pulikeshin II, and another great poetess of Karnataka, who wrote wonderful works in Sanskrit, Vijjika or Vijayambika. And Dandi's Dashakumara Charita is entirely based on this. And his other work, that is Avanti Sundari Katha, again based on this. And he himself says about this work, Bhuta Bhasha Mayim Prahuhu, like that, this work which was in Bhuta Bhasha, that is Paisaci, Katha hi sarvabhashabhi sanskritena cha badhyate Bhuta Bhasha mayim prahur adbhutartham Brhatkathaam. By this scholars infer that this work would not have been seen by Dandi because Ahuhu, people say so. But we should not jump to conclusion by that Dandi had no first-hand information about Brhatkatha, because his Dashakumar Charita is entirely based on that. And interestingly, Dashakumar Charita has seen several other editions. In Karnataka, we have one person by name Chaundarasa wrote Champu Kavya Abhinav Dashakumar Charita. Even in Andhra Pradesh, we have Dashakumar Charita. And there we have one more work called Shodashakumar Charita, Koravi Goparaju, writing about 16 princes. Means any such story which is not belonging to the vast scope of Ramayana and Mahabharata finds its place in Brhatkatha. That's why it is Brhatkatha. And this Brhatkatha is not a work of no precedence. It finds its roots in Vedic Akhyanas, Upakhyanas, and even in the stories of Mahabharata and others. In Mahabharata, we have a lot of animal fables. In Udyoga Parva, I have several stories which have been adopted by Panchatantra. Even in Shanti Parva and Anushasana Parva, you see beautiful stories. I am unable to go to those details, but we have lot of stories. And then in the Puranas also we have such stories. Many such stories have been cited in the Brhatkatha tradition. Again, in Brhatkatha we have stories and references to Ramayana and Mahabharata. I have made a big list of all the references of Ramayana and Mahabharata in the existing Brhatkatha version, that is Kathasaritsagara. It is as big as 22,000 verses. Just 2,000 verses less than Vālmīki Ramayana. And Kshemendra's earlier work, that is Brhatkatha Manjari, it is of 7,500 verses. And Budhaswami's Brhatkatha Shloka Sangraha has 4,539 verses. This is how the tradition is preserved in Sanskrit. And in Tamil we have Perungathai, again Vasuki mentioned, Konguveliyar is the king who wrote this. It is again incomplete. And Uve Swaminath Iyer, the doyen of Tamil critical editions, who is justly famous for the resurrection of the Sangam literature and other later literature, he himself edited this. And was also mentioned about the discipline of Somadeva, how faithful he was to original. Yatha moolam tathaivetan namanagapyatikramaha grantha vistar sankshepa matram bhashacha bhidyate auchityanvaya rakshacha yatha shakti vidhiyate katha rasavighatena kavyamshasya cha yojana. Yatha moolam, as the original I am writing, namanagapyatikramaha, not an iota of deviation from the original. Grantha vistara sankshepa matram, I am just going to condense it. Kshemendra says, I am going to condense Mahabharata in such a way that even an elephant will be shown through a small mirror as reflection. Likewise, I will be doing it. And he has done it. And even the people who made critical edition of Mahabharata, Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute people under the headship of Vishnu Sitarama Sukatankar, the great soul, they have relied upon Kshemendra. And also the Kavittare Bharata of Nannaya, Tikkana and Yerra Pregada of Telugu tradition. That's how Kshemendra, they were all very faithful. They are not tampering with the story. Clear, Madhvacharya in the Mahabharata Tatparya Nadiya says, some people, they throw their own verses into the original like that. He warns, he gives cautions. Likewise, he says, Namanagapyatikramaha. You should look into Abhinav Bharati of Abhinav Gupta. In the prologue itself, he says how a work has to be edited and how it has to be seen. So we have a tradition of looking at the critical things properly, bringing out a critical edition, Shuddha Pata. Malinatha, while commenting upon the Meghaduta of Kāliḍāsa, says, Atra prakshiptapi shlokaha vyakhyayante. I know that these are interpolations, and yet for the beauty of them, I cannot throw them or dismiss them away. I am going to comment upon Pradyotasya predohitaram vatsarajotra jagre atreva bhut. Like that, this verse he comments on, gives commentary, and that is description of Ujjain in connection with the Pradyota, the king, the father of Vasavadatta, like that. So our tradition, it had its own critical acumen. We have to discover, rather rediscover that. Says this Grantha Vistara Sankshepa Matram. Kshemendra in his Kavikantha Varna says a poet should be adept of expanding the story and contracting as well. For painters and artists, exercises will be given how to enlarge a painting and how to reduce it. Likewise, these trainings were given. Auchityanvaya rakshacha yathashakti vidhiyate. But in the original, as the stories used to have back and forth changes and some confusions, that is also solved to an extent. Kshemendra has done it better than Somadeva, but Somadeva tried to be more faithful to the original, and that's why he has restored some of the confusions in the order of the stories. You can look into those details by your own, by looking at those respective texts. Katha-rasa avighatena kavyamshasya cha yojana. Without violating the modus operandi, that is rasa. Rasa is the master key. Rasa is the great formula. Following that, kavyamshasya cha yojana. Santi siddha rasa prakhyaha, yecha ramayanadeha, kathashraya natir yojya svecha rasa virodhini. It is said so by Anandavardhana in Dhvanyaloka. One should not deviate from the spirit of the original. He has followed that. And we have Brhatkatha's tradition being reflected in Jain and Buddhist traditions also. To think them as exclusive is another wrong thing. Jain tradition or Buddhist traditions, they are offshoots of Sanatana Dharma. Because we see so much of borrowing from them. Naturally, when a thing is very, very popular, they want to adopt. Everyone who wants to propagate his or her beloved philosophy or religion or belief or whatsoever, they try to use them. And so Buddhists and Jains, they have used that is Dasharatha Jataka and Paumacharyu of Vimalsuri and all the same thing from the Jain tradition. And in the Shravakachara stories of Jains and also the Jataka kathas of Buddhist tradition, we see the reflections there. Lot of reflections we see. Though the main stories are not kept, they have their own. But in the Jain tradition, we have Udayana also. If you go to some research which has been done well in this direction, you see how the Jain traditions speak about Udayana, how the Buddhist traditions speak about Udayana. These things are quite interesting. And then we have so much in these stories. The whole of India is pulsating there. Just to give the details, it is the world, it is the universe of commoners. We have from rags to riches, so many stories go on. Yoginis, Shakinis, Dakinis, witches, black magicians, Kapalikas, and the sadhakas who want to acquire the powers of Vetala or Betala. Incidentally, the 25 stories of Betala, the Betala Panchamshati or Vetala Panchamshati, which has two recensions in Sanskrit independently, the root is here. Vetala Panchamshati, and that is how Vikramaditya is associated. Here you see, the associations are too many. One tradition of Vikramaditya is there, another tradition of Udayana is there, and yet another tradition of Shalivahana or Shatavadhani is there. All these three great heroes of history find their places, and later comes Bhojaraja. And Simhasana Dvatrimshika of anonymous authorship, which moves around Bhojaraja, and we have many such stories on Bhojaraja, starting from this to the other one, Bhoja Prabandha of Ballala Sena or Ballala Deva at Ballala. All these are inspired by Brhatkatha. So, the summum bonum of this is any story or any bunch of story, it is again directly or indirectly connected to Brhatkatha. That is how we see. And we have devoted wives, devoted husbands, and unfaithful husbands, unfaithful wives, frail wives, harlots, prostitutes, and then pretentious sannyasis and pretentious sannyasinis. Many times, Bauddha sannyasinis becoming harlots, you see, and good mothers, bad mothers, stepmothers, good prostitutes, good ganikas, quarreling wives, and then people going in search of their fortunes, irresponsible husbands, irresponsible parents, and responsible parents, and a Brahmin becoming a traveler and then going in search of his fortune and becoming a merchant, and vice versa. Many merchants becoming sages, kings becoming travelers, and a Brahmin becoming king. Like that, we have all the varnas, all these jatis, they come together. This is how it's a beautiful melting pot. If we see, that was the reality, and that's why when people want to know more about ancient India, they try to search in inscriptions, as the modern dictum is anything which is found in inscription is sacred truth. To an extent, it is so, but this literary tradition is also very, very important. For example, if you search for inscriptional evidences in the case of Vidyaranya, we find lesser inscriptions and more authentic and reliable information in the written books in the form of treatises. If you look into the Vedabhashya of Sayanacharya, Vedartha Prakasha, you see a lot of details about when Vidyaranya took to sannyasa, before that what was his name, how long he was a minister, all these things will be known by that. If you look into all the Veda Bhashyas of Sayanacharya, all the 4 Vedas, including the Shukla Yajur Veda, like that, this written evidence in the form of literature is very important. And more than anything, it gives the actual feel of the society. Many times, the inscriptions which have been carved by the kings may be having a panegyric references to their family, their ancestors, and their achievements and all. Even a small tiny kingdom will be Chatusamudra Mudrita Vasumati, like that. But these stories, by spirit, they speak highest truth. They are most faithful to the spirit of truth than any other evidences, and that's why. But we should be cautious. We should be careful while looking into those evidences. For that, it's a treasure trove. And also told about Panchatantra. The Panchatantra textual tradition itself is very, very big. For that, again, we have Mahabharata. In Kathasaritsagara, we come across stories of fools. We come across stories of crooked men. Bunches of such stories, they are dispersed judiciously in Panchatantra. Starting from Tantrakhyaika, the oldest Kashmiri version of Panchatantra, up to Hitopadesha of Narayana, a scholar from Bengal. To that we have so many stories. And one more Panchatantra version was also there in the name of Vasubhaga Bhatta. Vasubhaga Bhatta had his own recensions of Panchatantra, but we are now having the Vishnu Sharman's version. This Vasubhaga Bhatta's Panchatantra tradition is preserved in Karnataka. Karnataka's one poet of 12th century, Durgasimha, he has written Karnataka Panchatantra, Champu Kavya. There he says Vasubhaga Bhatta's tradition is being followed. And interestingly, this tradition of Vasubhaga Bhatta is more popular in Southeast Asian countries where Panchatantra is found in different ways. For all this, again, Brhatkatha is the nodal point. And we have Chaturbhani, a beautiful collection of 4 plays, 4 monologue plays. Vararuchir Ishwaradatta Shamilaka Shudrakascha Chatvaraha Yete Bhanan Bhabanu Kashakti Kāliḍāsasya. Vararuchi, Ishwaradatta, Shudraka and Shamilaka. These 4 people are real poets. What is the strength of Kāliḍāsa in front of these 4? A verse goes like that. But we should not take it as it is. Kāliḍāsa is a very great poet. According to me, after Vyāsa and Vālmīki, Kāliḍāsa is the next Rishi Kavi. After him, the 4th place is still empty. Anamika Sarthavati Babhuva. But what the author of that verse intents is, in picturing the society as it is in all its black and white, in all its grey shades, we need this. Yes, it is so. If you go to Padataditaka, you find a world by itself. If you go to Dhurta Vita another world by itself. Likewise, to know the Indian society, you have to go to Bhanas, Brhatkatha and others. And again, Natikas. I have so much of material. Sorry, I have to rush through. In Bhanas, we have the cross society as it is being seen. The world of harlots, the world of pimps, the world of prostitutes, the world of traders. In Padataditaka, even the traders and chieftains from Greece and Rome, they used to come and they used to settle here and they used to long for, they used to wait for the appointments of our courtesans. It was very, very difficult to get. All these things we see. That was, if you look into the description of Ujjain in Padataditaka, it is another world by itself. And even Pataliputra of the other works in Chaturbhani. This is how it is the hard reality of the society. But we have one more thing, the soft reality of the royal family, the harem romances. For that we have a Natika tradition. Natikas, Kāliḍāsa himself is the fountainhead of Natikas, I can say. Though his Malavikagnimitram is treated as a Nataka, long ago I wrote a paper before 35 years or so. Malavikagnimitram is a Natika. There I have established. It is the prototype model after which all other Natikas have been developed. Natika means it's a 4-act play, a harem opera, where the king and few other minor male characters will be seen and many characters will be women. And then they will be dominating. And the hero is henpecked. He is not at all assertive. He is scared of his wife, but at the same time he is very fond of the attendants of his wife. You can see Clinton, Monica, everything here. But there you see so much of royal truth being tenderly revealed. If you see Priyadarshika, Ratnavali, Kanakalekha, many such, and then Rajshekara himself has written one Viddhashala Bhanjika, and is Karpura Manjari, though in Prakrita it is Natika itself. The Prakrit Natikas were called Sattaka or Sataka. Many such Natikas are there. Studies have been made on these things. And then independent stories, popular stories. I told about Panchatantra. The animals, plants, trees, caves, mountains, every character, everything becomes a character there. And that has influenced even the Aesop's fables also. And these Panchatantra stories have gone to Persia, have gone to Jews. In Hebrew also we have Panchatantra, and that has come to Persia as well. Here we have Karataka and Damanaka, there we have Karlak, and then Damanak, like that. The same names have been changed according to their pronunciation. And the Pahlavi's translation by 7th century Common Era itself, we find the translations of Panchatantra. And Tani, who translated Kathasaritsagara into English in multiple volumes as Ocean of Stories, he gives a lot of these details and says storyology is a subject dealing with stories. And he says there are 100 types if we take that as the narrative techniques are of 100 types. How to narrate a story. There are several prototype models of stories. If there are 100, more than 60% are found in Brhatkatha tradition itself. And especially the story within the story, we popularly call that as Chinese box. It is Indian box. Always China ruthlessly burgling, stealing our things. And the Arabian Nights, dawn is here. It is only night. The dawn of Brhatkatha we see. The Shahjata and the king, all the stories, they find their roots here. And the story within the story, and building suspense, and then keeping the story for next night, and procrastinating, all these things are found in Panchatantra, in Brhatkatha tradition. Lots of such details. And one such thing is Shukasaptati. Shukasaptati is again belonging to this tradition. One merchant who goes for an overseas assignment, and his wife, of course, she was devoted, but all these devotions will be put to test when once the situations are changing. Till her husband was with her, she was a pativrata. Once he was away, others came, started polluting her mind, and then she made up her mind for a date with some other person. She wants to go away. Then a parrot, it says, well, you can go. You have dressed well, you are going to have a date, it's all good. But if you come across some difficulty, how would you maneuver? How would you overcome that? Tell me about that. Some XYZ, she did so. Can you do so? Well, tell me how she did. For that, you should not go today. I shall tell you a story. Like that, for 70 days, it postpones this wretched woman's date. By the time the husband comes, every story is very, very engaging. Dhurtakyana, and then Kshemendra is a big storehouse of all these things. And even one poet by name Damodar Gupta was a minister also in Kashmir. His Kuttini Mata, many such details are available. Yakshas, Gandharvas, Siddhas, Apsaras, many people they come and they become characters here. And in these Brhatkatha stories, we have many maritime culture's details are given. For example, several islands, means several big lands of mass have been referred to here. Suvarna Dvipa, that is the Indonesia, as we know. Suvarna Dvipa is mentioned, and then Pravala Dvipa is mentioned, Karpura Dvipa, Kataha Dvipa, Narikela Dvipa, Simhala Dvipa, and so many things. And nowhere we have strange references. Everyone is a familiar one. Nothing is strange. They are not new to see. Maritime culture of India existed since the time of Vedas. Indram Vayam Vanijam Hava Mahe, it is said so. One person by name Bujju was devoted to Ashwins, and his father Tukra was not. Then he prayed Ashwins, and somehow he managed to come safe even in the sea voyage. Such references are seen in the Veda itself. We have references to ships which had 100 and 1,000 rows, Shataritra, Sahasraritra, like that we have. And here we have lot of such references. Abdhau Vahana Bhangena Nimagno Nashamagataha. Shipwrecks were very common. Vahanaye Bhagne, Pota Bhanga, Bhagna Vahana, like that. Many references are there. And how they go, and what are the difficulties that they face, and how it used to happen. You see a lot of such references in the travel records of the Western people. But here we find much more earlier than those records. Here we find such details. And we have a lot of references to hunting, gambling, alcohol, many such things. All vices have been represented. Good and bad, everything is there. It is a world by itself. And then Tamralipti, a port city of Bengal, that used to be a nodal point for the overseas travel of eastern India. All along the coast of eastern India we had. Incidentally, Pattanam in Sanskrit is a port city. Amarakosha itself is proof for that. We have Nagapattanam, Machalipattanam, then we have Vishakhapattanam, Channapattanam. All these pattanams, they refer to such cities, port cities. And then many such islands, Hamsadvipa, Abhimarga, like that, and Yanapatra, and how the navy people, the sailors, they used to misbehave, and how they used to win the hearts of people and try to double cross them. These things are given in great detail. And we have many reference to worships starting from Mahamamsa Vikraya. Mahamamsa is a technical term, human flesh. That is killing the human beings. We should not say sacrifice. Starting from that, we have very sober and very pious worships. Many things were there. We have very interesting stories. Wants to get his son married to a beautiful woman, but his son is very ugly looking. That's why he hires another person. You come for my son's marriage. Instead of my son, you marry her, and I will give you money and you go on your own way. And my son will be getting that beautiful girl. And he double crosses him also without giving money. He wants to kill him. He wants to drown him. But somehow he escapes. The story is very interesting. And also the father-in-laws, they are trying to abuse the daughter-in-law by creating some gossip which is not at all true about her character, trying to blacklist her, trying to get away with her, and trying to see that his son will be married to some other rich woman. then how she protects her chastity and how she protects her stature as a devout wife. This is a very interesting story, and that has been developed as a play, social play by Brahmayashaswamin of Kashmir. Unfortunately, the work is not available. The summary of the work and certain citations are available in the work of Vakrokti Jivitakara, Kuntaka. In his Vakrokti Jivita, they are available. I am overwhelmed by the details, but I stop with this for some time for question answers and other discussions. So much of material is available in Brhatkatha, and the tradition is also very vast, very, very vast. Coming to the plays and all I told, and even the literary works, and even the sculptures, Vasu mentioned that in the Ganga sculptures, in the sculptures of Chalukyans, if you go to Pattadkal, in the Mallikarjuna temple, in the Papanashana temple, we have references to these Panchatantra stories. We have the stories of a monkey and the crocodile. The stories have been carved well. Everywhere in Karnataka we see such stories, and even in the paintings we do see. In the records of in the Persian records also we see the stories being painted. So that tradition as illustrations are seen. This fortune is not for other things. Only in Ramayana and Mahabharata and Bhagavata, in such Puranic stories, we have a lot of representations on stone and on paper and other written material, even on the murals, as murals. But in the Panchatantra and Brhatkatha tradition, we do see such details. And in dance also, we have a lot of such things. Because we have many Rupakas and Uparupakas. 10 Rupakas are very famous, Dasharupaka. We have starting from 18 as per Sahitya Darpana of Vishwanatha, up to we have 27 Uparupakas. At the later day theatrical and dance traditions, we do have lot of references to Brhatkatha. References means we can immediately connect to Brhatkatha when we see those representations. Likewise, Brhatkatha is a very vast tradition. For example, you see, Nagananda is a very well-known play of Sriharsha Shiladitya, Harshavardhana, who was a Maukari king who ruled in Kanuj as the capital, Kanyakubja. And his well-known play is Nagananda, perhaps the best play. And Nagananda's story again goes to this, because the king of the king Jimutavahana is a Vidyadhara Chakravarti, and this deals with Vidyadharas, and full story of Nagananda is seen here. Like that, you mention an original theme which is independent of Ramayana and Mahabharata in flavor, means it would go to Brhatkatha. Like that, we have lot of such references. Why even the Kadambari of Bāṇa has its origin in Brhatkatha. Means no poet has escaped the positive influence of Gunadhya. So Gunadhya is a rishi of his own merit. With this, I stop. But one thing should be remembered, and that should be driven home. Brhatkatha is not a thing away from the spirit of Vedas. The Vedic spirit, it proclaims the freedom of soul, the absolute independence of Atma, and also the importance of dharmartha kama mokshas. And that's why it is clearly said, if all the 4 purusharthas are properly managed, apart from that, what else exists even on earth or in the other world? And that spirit is found here also. In Ramayana and Mahabharata, this may be told as vidhi, but here it has become nishedha. You should not behave so. It's a warning. Ramayana and Mahabharata, they become more popular from the perspective of vidhi, while this has become more popular from the perspective of nishedha. One tradition of Muladeva is there. Tinta Karala is there. Muladeva, Tinta Karala, they are all gamblers. They are all wise men who are adept in cheating. And Kshemendra draws a lot of material from that. If you look into many works of Kshemendra, like Kalavilasa, Darpadalana, Narmamala, Samayamatrika, Deshopadesha, many such things, we find how he was positively influenced by these things. One should be rooted in realism, means he has to go to Brhatkatha. And of course, Vyasa and Vālmīki, they are the champions of realism or capital. Here, through these works, India has restored many features. And this culture is seen in the greater India, the cultural India as we call, Sanskritika Bharata, Bṛhat Bharata, we see that. And more than that, many allegations have been laid heavily on Indians. They have no sense of humor. If you look into Brhatkatha tradition, we have so much of humor. And we have no inhibitions regarding these things. And also the dynamics of the society, that is very important. Nowadays, what has happened after the invasion of Muslims and after the European advent, we became more tight and more closed society. Before 1,000 years, before a millennia, before 1,000 years, the Indian society was not so. It was far more open. If you look into the marriage systems, the 8 systems of marriage as advocated by Manu and others, and even in Kautilya we find, we see so much of open-mindedness. So many possibilities were there. Likewise, we have the patitas, the people becoming patitas and again coming back to the fold of Sanatana Dharma. Many such things are seen. Means a very healthy society has its own ways of setting the clock properly. A healthy body, very easily it will restore itself. If something wrong happens, immediately it will come back to normalcy. And that we see in Brhatkatha. Unfortunately, after that, we have not found such things. Once derailment means forever derailed. But in Brhatkatha, we see a lot of such references here and there. How the healthy society reacted to these things. There we have famines, there we have floods, there we have the heavy downpour, there we have scorching heat in summer. All such fury and beauty of nature is all seen. It is another universe by itself. With the same word which I proclaimed earlier, I conclude my talk for few question answers. Thank you. Namaskar.
Now we move to the Q&A session. A small announcement with regards to question and answers. Please be very precise and concise in your questions. Please don't give background to your question. Please don't do that. Anuktam apyo hati pandito janaha. So even if you don't give the background, I think Ganesh will be able to guess why you're asking a particular question and he'll be able to answer. So I think with that we can start taking questions.
One small detail. Nowhere in Brhatkatha we have fights with one god with the other. Nowhere we find the superiority of one god against the other. No Shaiva Vaishnava Kalaha. No such thing. No such nitpicking of philosophical fights. Nothing is seen. We see the true Sanatana Dharma, the beautiful Hinduism, which is amalgamation of all these things as per the Vedic spirit.
ನಮಸ್ತೆ, ನಾನು ವಿಜಯ ಉಪಾಧ್ಯಾಯ ಅಂತ. ತಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಒಂದು ಅರಿಕೆ ಏನಂತಂದರೆ, ನಾವು ಭಾಗವತದಲ್ಲಿ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಐ ಸ್ಪೀಕ್ ಇನ್ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಆರ್ ಕನ್ನಡ?
No problem.
Okay.
For the benefit of many others,
for the larger gathering. It so happens that whenever we come across Bhagavata or Ramayana, even there we have Upakatha like that. So, in fact, Bhagavata is adorned with so many stories and it comes very nicely. They have put forth, as you said, some of the important values of the life, or when we talk about the, as you said, vidhis and all. So, they have a beautiful way of putting it across. So, when we come across such upakathas and when we talk about the Brhatkatha, what is the difference? I would like to ask you, sir. Thank you.
Nowhere the word Upakatha is used in Bhagavata or other Puranas. Our Katha Kirtanakaras, they say. Of course, in Anandavardhana's Dhvanyaloka, in the second Udyota or third Udyota, if I'm right, references is being given to Parikatha, Mahakatha, Lagukatha, like that. But Bṛhatkatha is an encyclopedia of stories. That is the meaning of that. There we have so many stories. One main frame will be there. That is the story of Naravahana-datta. Udayana and Vasavadatta had one son by name Naravahana-datta, and he is married to so many apsaras, so many Vidyadhara putris, so many princes from various royal families like that. This adventure of Naravahana-datta, in the meanwhile, there will be many ministers through Udayana, including Yaugandharayana, and all had different children, and these children, they used to narrate one or the other story when his moods were low or when the moods were high, to control him or sometimes to boost his morale, something like that. Incidentally, the stories are wreathed, and again in the story itself, again we'll be having some other story. That's why I mentioned about the so-called Chinese box, that is the Indian box. There we have small stories. A story may go up to some 20 or 30 shlokas, and some stories may go up to several pages, like that we see. Here is the single volume, a very closely printed one, that is Kathasaritsagara, Nirnaya Sagar edition, later reprinted by the Motilal Banasdas. We see a lot of such stories. But these stories are called Akhyanas, and smaller stories are called Upakhyanas. And nomenclature is not of a big thing. Sanyasu kevalamami virjusham vivadaha.
Next question.
Do you have stories and passages which describe people and culture of different parts of India?
Yes, we do have. They have a lot of references. Starting from Kashmir to Karnataka, many provinces have been mentioned here and there. Many places are there, not just of India, even outside India. I told about the Southeast Asian countries, Karpura Dvipa, Suvarna Dvipa, Hunsa Dvipa, Marada Dvipa, Narikela Dvipa, many such things. All these references are given, but we cannot expect them as they are now. There are references. To what extent the story needs? To that extent. If we are interested in history, we have to extract history from that, from the war. It cannot be given as it is. If you, just for example, drawing one instance from there, it speaks about people going to Suvarna Dvipa in search of fortune, and there they are put to difficulties. You should connect to Indonesia of those days. For example, in Kāliḍāsa's Malavikagnimitra, in the forefront we have the royal romance, the harem romance. In the backdrop, another story goes with a low-key operation in another manner. We can say the mandrasthai in the terminology of music. The politics, the fight between Yajñadatta and Madhavadatta, the fight between Pushyamitra Shunga and the ministers of Brhatkatha, the last king of the Mauryas, and then the Ashwa, the horse, which will be caught by the Parasikas or the Hunas on the northwestern corner of India, and there Vasumitra, Agnimitra's son going, and he protecting the horse. Such things are mentioned in an apparently insignificant manner, but people who want history, they have to cull out more for that. Like that, here also in the stories we have such references. Very beautiful stories are there. We have stories starting from the Takshashila, the story of Panini, the story of Vararuchi, the story of Nandas, the story of Rakshasa. All these things, Rakshasa-matya, all are present in Brhatkatha. Brhatkatha means Kathasaritsagara of Somadeva.
So in your many other previous lectures also, you have told that the very important reason Ramayana and Mahabharata have been so much popular is because of their status as holy texts. So that thing has not been so much in for Brihatkatha. So is it a major reason that we have lost it as compared to Ramayana and Mahabharata?
Yes. Sometimes the Matiya aspects, I don't want to call it as a religious aspect. The Matiya aspect will be useful to protect certain things. To draw an analogy, our beautiful and amazing monumental architectural marvels in the form of temples are available since thousands of years, at least since 1500 or 2000 years or so. But we don't find such constructions belonging to royal palaces because they are secular in nature. As they were connected with mata, as they were connected with achara and puja, they were restored and they were preserved. So this is an essential thing. Anything which has to be preserved for posterity means it has to be connected one way or the other way with our achara and rituals. Then it will have a longer life. Perhaps that would have been the reason. But our earlier masters, they were not blinded by this. Later, we forgot. It means the fanatic invasions of the invaders, they killed our perspective. Our people lost that. If not, we would have had Brhatkatha intact. We would have had many such works. Because Kashmir was ruthlessly destroyed. Here, my friend Vasuki wrote a long article, and that is been published in the Preksha journal also. And he spoke also for Atharva once, I think, is it not? There, how crucial was the period of the formulation of the canons of Indian aesthetics? How crucial was the period? Because the codification of philosophy happened long ago. The codification of language happened long ago. During the time of Panini, during the time of the Upanishadkaras, during the time of Bhagavad Gita itself, much of our codification happened and culminated in the works of Shankara. All this happened before invasions. But Anandavardhana, Abhinavagupta, Kshemendra, Bhojaraja, all these people came after the invasions. It means how crucial was it is. In Kashmir, we hear about at least 500 people, directly or indirectly, directly as authors or indirectly by citations. We have no works of that volume available. Why? Even if you look into one work by name Sadukti Karnamrita of Sridhara Dasa, coming from northeastern India, or Vidyakara Subhashita Ratnakosha, they find more than 300 poets. Apart from stray verses, apart from a work like Gita Govinda of Jayadeva or Arya Saptashiti of Govardhana, we don't have. What all the works Chittappa wrote? We don't know. What all the works Dharmakirti wrote? We don't know. Dharmakirti belonged to South India, of course, but he is cited there. And many such poets were there. We don't know about their works. By looking at the stray verses itself, their quality is so amazing. Sparkling beauty of verses. And even people like Vasutalpa, Yogeshwara, many were there. Unfortunately, none of their full works are available. It was all mercilessly destroyed. We all know how in the area of Bengal and in the area of the modern Bangladesh, the invasions, they destroyed the original culture. By knowing that, we can infer how much we have lost.
Namaste, sir. The problem solving, the psychological concept, is it explained in Brhatkatha or in Panchatantra in a way where they do solve the problem, but it's like a concept.
It's like a
Concept of problem solving.
we do have a lot of worldly wisdom is there. Because of paucity of time, I could not go through that. One Panchatantra itself is a lifetime study. We have so many such models. Incidentally, unlike the Aesop fables, or unlike the stories of Khalifa Harun al-Rashid and others, only in Panchatantra, only in the Brhatkatha tradition, we have the stories having an inseparable content of Rajaniti. Rajaniti is very important polity. To a rough translation of that is polity. Rajaniti is so rich. If not, how the, please, three foolish young princes of Amarashakti, the king of Mahilaropya, a southern province, were made wise men by the efforts of a person like Vishnu Sharma, who was already 80, more than 80 by that time. he expects nothing as a reward for this work. A very beautiful beginning is given, Katha Mukha is given, very beautiful introduction is given. And then the other aspect is, we say that lot of folk stories are there, and the folk tradition is different from Sanskrit tradition like that. It's again another myth, and a very vicious myth. For example, A.K. Ramanujam, who has made lot of mischief like that, and he is a big name in Kannada and a very big name in Western countries, and our people, they always go to such writers who has no knowledge of Sanskrit, all borrowed feathers. There he has brought out a collection of folk stories, and he ruthlessly, shamelessly writes in the introduction that this is against the Sanskrit tradition. We don't find a grudging mother-in-law and a troubled daughter-in-law in Sanskrit like that. It's utterly wrong. I can show so many such stories. And again, thinking that the Puranas and Agamas are the so-called classical, and they are not folk. In the real sense, Veda itself is folk. In the real sense, Puranas are popular literature. I always say Puranas are Wikipedias of contemporary world. Those days, Puranas were the Wikipedias. Every Purana has lot of stories, and they are all folkish in nature. And for that matter, our tradition has not at all denigrated, has kept the folk tradition outside the purview of the Sanskrit writing. Because of the Sanskrit works, we have the folk tradition, folk music, folk dance, folk talas, folk instruments, all are preserved intact only because of Sanskrit. If you just go to works like Sangeeta Ratnakara or Manasollasa or Brihaddeshi, we find lot of such things. How to sing a Tripadi? Nobody knew. Only Someshwara wrote how to sing a Tripadi like that. We have many such references. All the folk instruments are enlisted there, and they are duly described, the constructional details and the playing details, everything has been given. What I am saying is, this way of bringing confusion and rift in our own society, in our own nation, is nothing but anti-social and anti-national activities. It is unlawful, to say the least. In the name of research, in the name of scholarship, in the name of wisdom, these things have been mooted up. It's very bad. So we have to take care of these things. And in Panchatantra, we have very such elements. No character has been given clean sheet. We see a lot of grey shades there. We have so many stories like win-win situation of a Tristani Rajakumari, where you cannot find who is wrong. At the same time, you cannot say who is right. Everybody wins at the end. This is the peculiar reality of the world. Such stories are many, and they have been enlisted here. That's why we have to put together all the stories, whether the Purusha Pariksha or the Samaya Pariksha or Dharma Pariksha or the stories from Samaya Matraka and Kuttini Mata or Shuka Saptati or Hamsa Vimshati or Shodasha Kumara Katha, Dashakumara, all these put together, Panchatantra, Hitopdesha, everything, you get a bigger picture. And the tradition is still alive, but it is not in the mainstream. And our entertainment industry is so nasty, to say the least. They go behind so many things, but they have not even thought about a serial on the basis of Dashakumara Charita of Dandin. Nothing can beat Dashakumara Charita as a multi-star feature. We have 10 princes having different achievements. You can't search for 10 heroes now in India. Heroes are falling short of this great theme. Like that, many such works are available. That's why, from the perspective of psychology, we have plenty. But one thing, you should not blindly match. You should try to appreciate. You should not go by the dictum of the so-called modern psychology. You should go by the perspective of Natya Shastra. In Natya Shastra, the 7th and 6th chapters are the real treasures, the perennial sources of psychological studies. You see, our priorities are highly erroneous. More than the Yoga Sutras, I say twice, more than the Yoga Sutras, it is Natya Shastra that is very important. The very purpose of Yoga Sutra is Chittavritti Nirodha, but Natya is Chittavritti Vilasa. Chittavritti Vilasa is very important to understand psychology, not Chittavritti Nirodha. See, just by the consuming a tablet that stops diarrhea, can you think of the nature of diarrhea? For that, you should go to something else. That is how Natya Shastra becomes very important. Here, our closeted mind for some fantasies. Now Chanakya, Patanjali, Panini, they have become fancy names. But Bharata is no more, unfortunately. Because everybody can understand, everybody can feel Bharata. The fictitious supernatural or fictitious mystical things, they have kidnapped our minds than the reality of rasa. These are the problems in our tradition, in our modern researchers, in the minds of the nowadays recently enlightened Indians, post Narendra Modi era enlightened Indians. They have this problem.
We take that as the last question.
Sir, good evening. Like great scholars of yesteryears, are you also inspired by this Brhatkatha tradition while writing your great novel Manina Kanasu in Kannada?
Not a great novel, of course. It's my novel. Certainly, if not, it was a humble tribute toward this great tradition. It is my fortune that I could connect Udayana story with the Charudatta story. Dhira Lalita and Dhira Shanta, they are clubbed together. The Ujjaini and Kaushambi was wreathed together. Please.
ಸರ್ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ನಾನು ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಶ್ಯಾಮ್ ಪ್ರಸಾದ್ ಅಂತ. ಈ ಪಂಚತಂತ್ರದಿಂದ ಆಗಿನ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ 3 ಜನ ಪೆದ್ದ ರಾಜಕುಮಾರನ ಒಳ್ಳೆ ರಾಜನನ್ನಾಗಿ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಯುಗದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಷ್ಟೆಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಇದ್ರೂ ಒಬ್ಬ ಪೆದ್ದ ರಾಜಕುಮಾರನ ಯಾಕೆ ಸರ್ ಅಷ್ಟು ಒಳ್ಳೆ ರಾಜಕುಮಾರ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕಾಗ್ತಿಲ್ಲ?
From Italy, we can't import Vishnu Sharmas.
Now I request Professor...
Vishnu Sharma was uttered the name of Chanakya, Bhagavan Chanakya. Only Machiavellis can be imported.
Now I request Professor Ganti Murthy for the closing remarks. Thank you.
And once again, thanks a lot for your patient listening. Thank you. Like it is said in our pujas, mantrahinam, bhaktihinam, kriyahinam, janardana, hutashana or maheshwara, yat pujitam maya deva paripurnam tadastute. To any lapses, I am held responsible, but not this great tradition. Thank you.
Matrubhyo namah, pitrubhyo namah, gurubhyo namah, sabhayi namah, sabhapatibhyascha namo namah. So as Shankaracharya says, yato vacho nivartante. There are no words for me to say. Just I'm spellbound. You could have listened to this Brhatkatha for a month-long. This kind of lecture that Dr. Shatavadhani or Ganesh Garu has brought out is that importance of for us to relook at some of these traditions again in a new light, and also to revive. When we talk about rejuvenate our culture, and essentially it has been lying dormant in libraries, we need to bring it to the laboratories and then bring it to the mainstream societies. And unless we do that, our tradition, this parampara, is going to still remain dormant. I think this is something that we need to really think about, and the responsibility is on all of us to make sure that our traditions are flowing as a Jnana Parampara, Bharatiya Jnana Parampara. That is the motto of our Bharatiya Jnana Parampara Vibhaga at the Ministry of Education. And we partner with a lot of our like-minded organizations, and we are fortunate that we are partnering with Atharva Forum on this kind of seminar series. This is our second seminar series that we have conducted, second seminar in the series, and I'd like you to all to support them. And again, there should be many more people. It should be a societal support that needs to be there for reviving all our traditions in this way. And let us look back into some of these things. And after Shatavadhani or Ganesh Garu has said, I don't really have to say too much here. It will be not appropriate. So all I want to say is Sashtanga Bada Vivandanam to our Shatavadhani Ganesh Garu, and let many more Shatavadhani Ganesh Garu come up in this land. With that, wish to the Parameshwara and hope to you all